All right, welcome guys to what I would consider a somewhat unique webinar of its liking. We're going to be spending some time here with two folks that I've met over, I guess, the last 3 years, and I'm excited to have them here in the conversation that we're going to engage in. I'm Carrie Williams, CEO of Leadership Network and Executive Director of Exponential Next. And I'm just going to ask these guys all to introduce themselves as we get jumping in and diving in here around nerd culture and nerd ministry. And so whoever would have thought, I don't know what your age bracket is as you watch this, but the term nerd would be something that we are actually digging into to leverage for the sake of the gospel. I just love it. I think it's super exciting. So Bill, if you'll introduce yourself.
I'd be happy to. My name is Bill Couchenour. I'm the Director of Deployment for Exponential and work alongside actually for Carrie at some Leadership Network initiatives. So yeah, happy to be here with you guys.
Thanks, Bill. Bill says he works for me. We definitely work alongside each other, and he is the boss and I am the applesauce. So,
no, you need to look at that org chart again.
Oh, goodness. All right, Mark, if you'll just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Mark Lutz. I am the lead and founding pastor of a church called Lux, Lux Digital Church. It is not a church named after me. Lux is the Latin word for light. And so my wife and I started Lux in 2021. We became part of the Exponential Ventures program. I feel like it's changed. Has it changed names? I feel like it's changed names. Has it at some point?
So yeah, just go with Ventures. All is
Ventures.
well.
Okay. Yeah. Expo, Shark Tank, something. We became part of it at the very first one. So I think we were some city in Texas back in May of 21. And since then we've had the opportunity to do some pretty awesome stuff with Exponential and also with Leadership Network. Yeah, our whole heart and goal is to build a digital church that really reaches ecclesiology of what a church can be and to help the Big C church understand how to reach the post-millennial generations. And we're doing that primarily through ministering in the gaming culture, which we believe is sort of a microcosm of digital natives that sets an example and a beautiful place to experiment with fully digital ministry in a way that is going to be representative of how every church is going to have to do it for Gen Z, Gen Alpha, and beyond.
Love it. Thank you, Mark. All right, Bubba.
Hey, my name is Bubba Stallcup. I'm CEO, founder, and president of an organization called Love Thy Nerd, which exists to simply be the love of Jesus to nerds and nerd culture. We do that a lot of different ways. Our mission statement is vague and specific on purpose. We are doing a very specific thing by being the love of Jesus, but we can do it in 1,000 different ways. We write a lot of thoughtful content, record a lot of thoughtful content in podcasts and on videos on our website, lovethynerd.com. because we want people to think Christianly and critically about the things that they experience in nerd culture. We also do relational outreach. That's where we actually take people to these nerd culture events, 85,000 people in Indianapolis or bigger around the world. And we just be the love of Jesus to the people that are in the space, because we think that what they love matters because it matters to them and they matter to God. And we try to express that in any way that we can. And we also have intentional community, which is our online space. We may meet somebody, but what then? If we're just seeing them once, twice, or even 3 times a year, that's just not enough to build a relationship. We have to find ways to continue those spaces. And so we've created some asynchronous communication platforms, and we use some of those things like Discord in order to keep the things going. Like, for instance, we're having an Ahsoka watch party every week for every episode that drops on Disney Plus inside of our community, so people can hang out, build relationships that lead to bigger conversations about Jesus down the road.
I love it. I love it. So, Mark and Bubba, so let's start off by kind of doing a little bit of a, hey, this is how we know each other. You mentioned, Mark, that we met at Ventures. So we do this thing called Next Ventures, and we really seek to identify innovative projects or ministries that we believe are helping shape the future of the church. And we do it through multiple different ways, but our mainstream is by referrals. So we have a trusted group of folks that we get referrals from, including our venture partners who invest thousands of dollars into a grant fund that then becomes a larger venture fund that gives us the capability really to pour gas on what folks like Mark and Bubba are doing. And that is where we met. Like Mark said, he was part of the first round, and then Bubba was our most recent round here in 2023, actually just last week. And so that was exciting.
Has it only been a week?
I think it's only been a week.
Oh.
I'm pretty sure it's only been a week. It was last week. So I just want to know from you guys, before we jump into kind of down the rabbit hole around what nerd ministry looks like, what, you know, and why it's important and why we should pay attention, even if we're not privy to understand all of the things, like the things in your backgrounds that somebody on our chat mentioned, your cool gaming backgrounds. Like, I had no idea they were gaming backgrounds. I don't know. We'll go down all those rabbit trails, but tell me just a little bit about your Shark Tank experience and really how, if it has impacted the ministry that you do.
Yeah,
Mark,
I'd love to share.
Since Bubba, it was just last week.
Yeah. So the Shark Tank experience was it's, when you say put fuel on the fire is a great analogy of really what our experience was. So we had the privilege of being able to do it twice. So we were at number 1, and I think we were then again at number 2. So we were in, I think, Austin or Houston, Texas. And then Bubba's from Texas. I'm not from Texas. I can't keep track of all the places that Texas has. They collect too many things. And then the second one was in Nashville. And so the one that we were at, the first one, was like really intimate and much smaller group of people. But it was really, really powerful. Each of us had some time to kind of share from our hearts. And to be honest with you, it was a really great time. Like, I felt like presenting there really got knocked out of the park, and we made some really great connections. And one of the connections we made was with Pastor Paul, who's now the president of the Extraordinary Church Collective, and also the lead and founding pastor of a church in Cincinnati called Rivers Crossing. And they have become our number 1 partner and financial supporter. And so, like, they're also the host of an event that we may get into in this or not, Megazord, which we did last year, which is collecting about 24 Christian creators and organizational leaders together who are from this space in the gaming world. And then the second one that we went to was amazing as well, despite the fact that my presentation was first and terrible, and resulted in maybe one of the more arrogant presentations I've ever made in my life from a stage. I just have to think that there's a dozen people there. Luckily, there were some people there at the first one and the second one, and the people that were there at both were like, this guy sucked today, but he wasn't so bad before. And so it was through that we made a great relationship with Saddleback Church and Right Now Media, and Brian over at Right Now Media has become a personal friend, along with his brother Scott. I'm going to be presenting on digital ministry and digital discipleship at the Right Now Media conference here in a couple of weeks. And through that, like, Saddleback coming alongside our church and giving the stamp of approval. Let me just tell you that when Saddleback says these guys are okay, it opens up a lot of doors for future conversations with churches. And so that was all made possible through Leadership Network and Exponential sort of gathering those thought leaders and church leaders in the same room, and then giving guys like me, who's just like a no-name kid from Western Pennsylvania, right, who's worked at a church that's a great church, but like no one's writing an article about us, right? Like, it gave us an opportunity to get in front of people who had platform and had influence, and have conversations with them in an environment where, like, we weren't just completely lost in the mix, right? It was small enough and intimate enough that we could actually have those conversations and build those relationships. And for that, it was incredible for us. Yeah.
Awesome, Mark. Bubba, I know it's only been a week, but as you reflect 7 days ago, you know, what's your kind of your biggest takeaway as you look back and your hope for the future of what, you know, of what Ventures did and can potentially do for the future?
Yeah, I think that it is, I mean, more than anything, right? Because not everybody gets the big money, right? More than anything, it's a really great networking space. And not just for the sake of networking, but networking with people who are like-minded. We're moving together, maybe not in the very same way, but towards a common goal. And there's something to be said about that. I'm a huge proponent of the word koinonia, which is intentional fellowship. And I felt a lot of that throughout the weekend, in between talks and lunches and dinners and just moments with each other passing in the hallway. It was, you might have been strangers on the first hour, but after that hour, it was like, okay, we're in this together and we're seeing things happen.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of conversations with people, even since then, that were just like, hey, we really appreciated what you guys said. And we love that. And man, we're so excited for what it is that you're doing, because it's kind of an awareness campaign for everybody that's there. May not have known what was going on in urban ministry had it not been for that. May not have known what was going on in RV ministry had it not been for Next Ventures. And so the same is true for nerd culture ministry, that they got to hear our heart and see that. And it really created pretty quickly bonds that I hope last pretty long. I met somebody who is just in Austin. He's actually part of y'all's team, and like he, is a pastor out there in Austin, and he's like, hey, I have got nerds, and we don't know what to do with them. We're not even fishing for them, and they're just coming to us. And so I look at those providential moments, and I say to myself, it's not about the money. I said that. I can't even tell you how many times I said that during that couple of days. It's just not about the money. We were doing things before this. We will be doing things after this. The call is bigger than the check here. But in that, having an opportunity to get around people, maybe get a little more gas, whether it be exposure or funding, we walked away from it going, this was just not even close to a waste of our time, our energy, or our effort. And I even left and I said, I'll do that at 12 more of those things if given the opportunity to do it, because I think that it has that much potential for our ministry and also for the people that can be impacted by the ministry.
Yeah, that's great. I love hearing that, Bubba.
Yeah. In fact, Carrie, I know this isn't the purpose of the webinar, but it might be good for people that are watching this. If you've got an what you feel like is an innovative ministry that's pushing into an area, new expression of the church, or someone that is, let us know, because we really do want to find out about those and platform those. And
absolutely. And we'll have an open opportunity every year at Exponential Global in March in Orlando, Florida. We've actually now opened up kind of a public application process that you'll see probably go live somewhere in the middle of the next 2 months, so that folks can come and do a live pitch at Exponential Global in a smaller room with a small group of people to ultimately secure a spot at Shark Tank. So it is now opened up to the public and outside of just the referral process, simply because we don't know what we don't know, and we don't know who we don't know. And we want to make sure that we're hearing and seeing folks on the fringes and the edges that we might not know about, and bring their projects into the light and engage more people around what they're doing. And so that's why it's a pleasure to do this webinar today. And so let's talk about the subject of this webinar, which is nerds. And so Mark and Bubba, you guys talk us through, what's a nerd? Who's a nerd? What
Mark's a nerd. I can tell you that for sure.
That's accurate. Yeah, that's accurate.
What categorizes people as a nerd?
Well, but it's in the name of your organization. So I feel like you are the most qualified one to make a definition here.
I mean, it's really interesting, right? Because if we're going one direction, I can make a case that absolutely every single person is a nerd about something. And what I'll tell them is, what is the one thing that you just feel like you've done a disservice to somebody else if during the conversation you did not bring that up? That's the thing you're a nerd about, whatever it is. Tim Mackey would say that he's a card-carrying Bible nerd, right? And I would agree with him on that. He absolutely is. But for us, what we really kind of hone in on nerdiness is anything that's in pop culture, video games, tabletop games, it's board games all the way back from like Monopoly and Sorry, all the way up to the newest things that nobody's ever heard of. And, also just really anything like comic booky or Marvel movie or anything like that. Like nerd it's everything. The reason we have any of this, the reason we're on Zoom right now is because of nerds, not the people that are potentially watching, but the nerds that built the platform. Geek is chic. Nerds rule the world. It's one of those things where I've been saying it like this lately. Nerds have been seen for a long time as fringe, but if you push so many things out to the edge, The fringe is on the inside, and it's insulated, and you don't even realize the change that's happening around you. And I think that that's kind of what we're seeing is you had this like 1980s, like Revenge of the Nerds, kind of moment where it was, glasses and wedgies and all sorts of stuff. And now you've got, like, love them or hate them, you've got your Jeff Bezos, you've got your Twitters and your X's and all sorts of stuff. Like these are the people and the organizations that are running the planet. And so it's not even fringe. We talked about this a lot at Ventures, that the numbers are staggering. 3.2 billion people on the planet are gamers. And that's just like video gaming. That's it. 3.2 billion, while 2.6 of those, with the most conservative numbers, are Christian. And so if we even talk about like potential of reach, whether or not like there's efficacy in that, right? The potential of the reach is massive. And they're right there. They're in your space, whether you're at the gym or you're at church or you're in your job or at a school, it doesn't matter. The numbers are saying that they're everywhere because there are no nerd colonies. They just don't exist. It's just society. And so what is a nerd? Literally everybody, most of the people, even if they think that they're not. I try not to convince people that they are. I would rather they just see that these people exist in time and space around us. They are in our midst.
Yeah, we were talking just before. It's interesting you say that things that we push to the fringe end up being in the center. And I was really blown away by the numbers. And Mark, I think you were quoting just before we started the numbers compared to the movie industry, and the movie industry was worth like $100 billion, but the gaming industry is 4 times that amount. So just, thinking about that, it is, and where, nerds, we thought of, as a sort of this minority, and like you said, on the fringe, but it very much is, perhaps the largest single group of people to be able to reach. So
well, it's even interesting, Bill, real quick. I mean, you're talking about the movie industry. Even then, of the top 10 grossing films of all time, 8 of them are nerd culture movies. The only 2 in the top 10 grossing of all time that are not is Titanic and the live action remake of The Lion King. And even with that one, you can make a case that it is, because nostalgia plays a heavy role in nerd culture. And so basically, like 1.5 out of the top 10 movies are not nerd culture movies. The rest are Spider-Man, Avengers, Avatar, Jurassic World, like that kind of stuff.
Mark, you were getting ready to say something too?
I mean, just to give you some numbers, you do a quick Googling, right? About $95 billion, $96 billion, in the movie industry in 2022. If you look at the prediction right now, the video game market, like 2023, 2022, $385 billion in just the gaming market. This is not nerd market, by the way. This is not making nerd movies. It's not crossover between the movie market and this market. And when we're talking about the scope of these gamers, Michael asked a good question. Wait, I got a question on that number. Does that include smartphone games? I don't know if I'd call them gamers. Well, I don't know if that includes smartphone games, A, but B, I would include them as gamers, because almost every person who I know who is a gamer also plays smartphone games. And if you know, and I don't have it at my fingertips, but if you know the staggering number of hours and money that gets poured into smartphone games, even in comparison, a lot of the number that we're looking at here, I'm willing to bet, is smartphone number in terms of the money. And so the concept that these people are not, I got to push back, that these people are not gamers or wouldn't identify as gamers isn't accurate. And in fact, if you look at the coming generations, it's a crazy number. Like people 15 and below, we're looking at numbers in like 75% plus people 15 and below self-identify as a gamer, right? Doesn't matter if they're playing iPhone games or they're playing Xbox games or PC games, they identify in some capacity as a gamer, which just means if your youth ministry is thinking about loving their neighbors, then there's a 75% chance that neighbor is a gamer. And so if you don't figure out how to love gamers really well inside of just youth ministry alone, you're looking at the very good chance that you're going to be missing out on about 3/4 of the people that might be willing to walk through your youth ministry. And so gone are the days in which you had this niche pocket of strange kids that watched a lot of anime. That was whenever I was a youth pastor 10 years ago. 10 years ago when I was in youth ministry, we had this niche pocket. We ministered to them a lot. We had a Magic the Gathering night. We did those things. Gone are those days, right? This isn't side thing. This isn't subculture. This is main culture across the board that people, because video games are so huge. I
think we're actually beginning to answer this next question, but how would you, what is the power of nerd ministry?
I think one of the keys for me for the power of nerd ministry, and we're different than what Bubba and LTN do, right? Bubba and LTN, they have this wider, it's very interesting because we sort of have a dual focus. Like, we're in the gaming world, but we're experimenting heavily with digital expression of church in the gaming world, because we believe this is the best place right now to experiment with what the church will need to be for the next generations. So I am a gamer and I am a nerd through and through. So I understand their language and I can speak it. And I really just looked at it and said, God, if you're sending me someplace, you didn't teach me how to speak Spanish yet, but you have taught me how to speak gaming culture and nerd culture. And so that's a language that I can speak. And that's a people of my tribe that I can go to who are very lost. So that being said, nerd culture is an incredible neutralizer in terms of unity. There's an incredible ability to connect with somebody. My wife and I went to Disney World with our girls this past spring. And have you ever driven past somebody, like, you've seen two motorcyclists drive past one another? They always wave to one another. You ever seen two people who drive Jeeps drive past one another? They always wave to one another, right? Because Jeep people know Jeep people and motorcycle people know motorcycle people. Well, nerds know nerds. And so, like, I'm going around Disney World and there's a head nod at every person in a Dungeons and Dragons t-shirt. There's a connection made with every person with a Discord shirt. There's a connection made with every person with a gaming shirt on that I knew they didn't just buy because they came to Disney that day, and Disney's the headquarters of Marvel now, right? Because there's an instant connection between us because we speak the same language and we are of the same people. And there's a certain extent in which culturally and especially religiously, gamers have been mostly, and nerds have been oppressed, right? We've been pushed out. We've been marginalized. We've been made to think that what we care about and what we love is completely unimportant, and honestly, that we shouldn't care about it, that it's actually wrong or even sinful for us to enjoy it or for us to care about it. And so because of that, within the church, man, those things connect like fire. Like, you find somebody else can't tell you how many people have found our church who have a church and they're like, oh my gosh, I've never fit in. I've been in church my whole life. I have never once fit in any of the churches I've ever gone to. Lux is the first place that I felt like home, because it's the first place I haven't been made to feel like what I enjoy is wrong.
Yeah, I think that's the idea of representation is important. And when you have somebody who has, literal or perceived spiritual authority over another person, look down and say, hey, I think that what you care about matters because it matters to you and you matter to God. Like, that kind of eye-to-eye connection is huge, because what it does is it tears down walls that we tend to build all the time. I've been telling people lately, I really feel like we're a people that every now and again, even though we live in a torn veil moment, that we find ways to rehang it and stitch it back together to create separation between us and God. And sometimes we'll have parents or youth pastors or, spiritual leaders in people's lives or whatever come up to us and they'll ask us, why won't little Johnny listen to me? And we'll start a conversation about, well, what do you think about little Johnny? I heard he likes to play Fortnite. And they're like, yeah, we just won't stop playing that stupid game. I'm like, well, that's probably why I won't listen to you. Because when we do stuff like that, we take the sharpest pair of relational scissors that we have and we snip those ties between us and them. And so when we need to speak truth in life into them, we've given them no reason to look to us for those answers. And so they go and they find them in other places. And people in general long to know and to be known. From a very early age, we do. And so if we are going to start treating the younger members of our society like that, right now, that would be lower end millennials and, our Gen Z and Gen Alpha. If we're already telling them, stop playing that stupid game, instead of, what I recommend is just go and Google that word of the game. If it's Fortnite, and learn 5 things, the first 5 words that pop up. Just learn what those words are and ask questions about them. And then what you see is you'll start to rebuild. And so what's the power of nerd culture ministry? It's limitless, honestly. Nerd culture it's a tool. It's a platform. It is a way by which we can build relationships between two separate people groups, people that do speak a language and people that don't speak a language. And I think that in the same way that like churches may send missionaries to Uganda without actually going to Uganda themselves, they are still a big part of that mission for the people that are actually going into that space. What we need to do is we need to get people on the front end of that, on the church side, to understand the missionaries that are being sent into the space so that then they can understand the efficacy of the ministry being done. Because I can't tell you how many times I've heard people tell me, oh, well, you're just playing video games all day. I wish that's what was going on. I would be lying to you if I said on the onset of this, that's what I thought was going to happen. But it was not very soon after we started that we started doing ministry. And ministry puts hobbies to the side, right? Like things become work after a while. And so the calling that the people that we know that are in this mission field, that are in nerd culture ministry, the calling that they have, we've watched them put things to the side for the sake of the ministry. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to come alongside of them and encourage them and equip them and show them that there is not just an easier way, but a better way to go about doing this with partnerships and all sorts of stuff. And so it's not just who can I reach. It's not even just who can Mark reach. It's who can we reach together as a part of a greater collective.
Carrie, is it okay if I share like a 1-minute story to just really emphasize that?
Yes, please.
When we started Lux, my senior pastor is at the age of sort of his sunsetting years. He's handing off the church here in a couple of months that he planted. He didn't understand any of this. He's not a gamer. He's not an online guy, none of that stuff. So we planted this church and they sent us, they helped fund us, did all those sorts of things. And I was sitting with him at breakfast one morning and I was explaining to him the phenomenon of Among Us, because it was really big at the time. Now, Chris had begun volunteering with the high school ministry because he wanted to help a couple of seniors that were boys graduate out. And that night he was doing a bonfire at one of the kids' houses with the other kids from small group. And that night he went and picked up one of the boys and they were driving to this other kid's house where they were going to do the bonfire. And he said, "What were you doing today?" And he said, "Nothing much. I was just, I was hanging out on Discord with my friends." Now, Chris and I had talked that morning about Discord. He said, "Oh, what were you doing on Discord?" I said, "We were just playing Among Us." And he said, "Oh, Among Us, isn't that?" And he gave like 4 facts about Among Us. And the kid's eyes lit up. And Chris said, I had never been able in all of my small group time with him to get him to say 3 or 4 words. And he talked for 20 straight minutes to me because I realized that he didn't live his life where I live my life. His life was lived with all of his friends in another state from where he came. And he plays games with them every day. He's on Discord every night. And that's where he participates in life. That's his source of social interaction. That's his source of entertainment. That's his source of life. And as soon as I understood something about it, even though I was 65, he just, boom, he just lit up and just talked about everything. That's the power of nerd ministry.
I love it. So question, I think we have like a 2-sided coin here when it comes to nerd ministry. We've got folks who are listening thinking, man, how do I engage in more conversations like that so that I can reach the next generation? Or even, I mean, what's the average ages in gaming? I know that's not the only nerd culture, but specific to gaming, because we've talked about it so much. What's the average age?
So there's a website out there called the ESA, THEESA.com, and they do yearly collection of statistics and data. And currently it's 33 years old. And so what's interesting is that average has dropped since last year. Last year, it was about 36, 37 years old, somewhere in that neighborhood. And the reason for that was pretty obvious because about 37 years ago, a little guy named Mario came with his super band of friends and landed on U.S. shores. And we have not known a life. I'm 37 years old. I've not known a life without Super Mario in my life. And so those are the things that we grew up with. And it's the same thing we're seeing with new generations as well. We make jokes about it like, wow, these kids have always had the iPad or they've always had the internet. They don't know the sound of dial-up, like these things. But it doesn't change the fact that those things are true. It doesn't change the fact of the fact. So for us to sit back and say, well, because that's not the way I did it, that it shouldn't be done. Those are the stick in the mud things that we in and of ourselves, even as, not even quite 40 yet, right? That we're trying to change about the things that did work for us, the boats that we brought up the mountain.
Yeah.
And so at 33, that's your target demographic. What's really crazy is that about 48% of those are women.
Oh, wow. What would you say is the normative, not average, but normative amount of time that somebody is gaming per week or per day?
Oh, geez.
Man, so again,
Right?
all these numbers,
we have all these stats, for our phones, right? Like
they all fluctuate.
I get a report every week of how much time I've spent online. And, my guess is it's pretty significant. It's a pretty significant number per day.
Yes, it is. So it's 12.8 hours average per week.
That's quite a few hours. And so I think we have folks listening who are probably trying to hear through two different lenses per se, or different ears. I don't know how you would say that, but you've got the one side with the folks going, okay, how do I disciple? How do I reach and disciple and mobilize people in this context? And then you've got the other side of church leadership looking at it going, oh my goodness, we've got this whole drove of people who potentially can be evangelizing and be mobilized into their calling right here, in the nerd culture, in some form or fashion. And so, and do you have any, I know we're way off script, guys, but do you have any advice? I know you've mentioned things like Google, Fortnite and look at the 5 words and understand it better. And, on the discipleship side of things. But what about the mobilization side of things? Maybe I'm a church leader listening to this and I'm going, I wonder if we have some folks in our church that might be interested in engaging in, being a voice for Jesus in these spaces. How can I equip them and how can I mobilize them? And what would you say to those folks?
I would start by, I think that for a lot of people, it has to be a shift in perspective, right? The church as a whole has thought in terms of generational evangelism, right? The question has been, how do I reach millennials? How do I reach Xers? How do I reach Gen Z? And I'm looking every conference, what every church conference does? The best 5 ways to reach Gen Z, the best 6 ways to reach young millennials. Well, like we as a church have to stop thinking that way, right? Because not only like hobbies and niches are the direction that the world has gone. The population is more fragmented than ever before. You cannot start a ministry that reaches all millennials because you can't start a ministry that reaches 2 millennials right now in many cases, right? You've got to begin finding common ground to meet people on. And to be honest with you, that's a shift in perspective for every church, because if your church is like mine, like not mine meaning Lux, like the one that I came from and the one that my wife and I still do attend, to be honest with you, launching a big gaming ministry, although I think would be important for them, might not be their best play. Launching a mudding ministry very likely may be, because we're pretty rural here and there's a lot of people that love mudding around here. And probably if they took 10 acres of their land and turned it into a mud pit that people could drive their trucks through, they would have a really great opportunity to do some really powerful evangelism and life change in this area. So I think for us, for me, this is more than just a call towards like gaming ministry. This is a different way that we think about evangelism, where we got to stop thinking about evangelism generationally, and we need to start thinking about how we can connect to and reach niche groups of people, and realize that when we target in on niche groups of people, we actually hit a wider swath. Like we targeted gamers, and I have probably, in my church is not large, I probably have 10 people who are women in their 60s who don't game, who attend my church faithfully every single week. They're part of small groups. They give. They're in church every week, right? Because we use gaming analogies during my church. Like our background is gaming centric. Like we're young, like unapologetically so. Like we're after a very specific type of person. And that has allowed us to hit people that we never, and we always say like, hey, aim for a small thing, be faithful with everybody that God sends you. So I think for me, it's a perspective shift. I think there's a lot of small things that you can also do. Churches are great at starting new programs. So I could give you a dozen ideas for new programs. Instead of buying another bank of video games to put inside your church building, just a heads up, kids don't come to church to play video games anymore. They stopped doing that a long time ago. They did that before because it was expensive to buy 4 controllers and hard to get 3 of your friends over to your house to play with you. But now they can sit at home with their controller, play with all their friends and 100 other people on Call of Duty online right now. And it's easier, simpler, and they don't have to give their friends food. They're not coming to your church to play video games with their friends. They're going to stay home to play video games with their friends. But the church that I came from, one of the things that we did, because we were board game enthusiasts, is we built a board game wall. And then we taught all of our leaders how to play the 60 games on the wall. Because one thing that the kids cannot do at home that they are deeply desiring is connection. And so our youth group leaders for years, they would do overnighters with just their small group in the board game room, and they would order pizzas and play board games with the kids. And they would teach them new board games. And like that was the space where they could sit across the table from one another and connect. So there are ways for you to connect with nerd culture that just look different than they did in the 90s. Like the world has changed.
Yeah, so good. Bill, I can see you taking some notes. Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering too if part of the strategy might be just to understand who in your church is already gaming. Because I was thinking about I have 2 grandsons, both are gamers, and my son and daughter-in-law, we're trying to be careful about how much time they're spending doing games. And then he comes up and goes, "Hey, one of the guys in my group wants to come meet us. And his name is Matt." And they're like, "Yeah, right. Matt is," and they're picturing, Predator and all. And it turns out it's this kid from Minnesota, and they live in New Jersey, a kid from Minnesota. And his family is so impressed at how my grandson was running that particular room and not allowing some abusive language and that sort of thing, that they were making their first trip ever to New York City and wanted to stop by and meet in person. And, and my son and daughter-in-law are like, not do we, so, but it made me think there are probably a lot of people already in their church that are gamers. And is it a matter of helping to disciple them so that they can reach the people they're already in contact with?
I think that is an unequivocal yes. Like there's no other answer than that. Part of the issue, is understanding that these people even exist in your church, right? And then once you have that information, now you got to do something with it. And I think as somebody who was in vocational ministry for 12 years, those facts kind of scare me a little bit, right? Because that moves you to action, moves you to have to do something. If we don't ever seek out that information, then we never have it. We don't have to do anything, and we can just keep on keeping on. But the moment that we identify that maybe there is a sect of people in our congregation, maybe there is an entire demographic of people in our congregation that are they seem lethargic, they seem apathetic, but it's because not that the church needs to be something that's always feeding, but there's no place for them to really plug in. We have different ministries for hunting and women's ministry, and our church has a quilting ministry and like all this other stuff, but we don't have anything specifically for these people. And then if you're like some churches in the United States at least are, that they're very mission oriented, mission minded. Hey, we're going to go out and we're going to do things. We're going to go across the world to a Kenya or to Yugoslavia or something like that. Well, maybe that's not what that person is best suited for. Maybe that's not what God has called them to do. And instead of maybe raising $1,200 to $1,500 to go and poorly build somebody's house in Honduras, right? You could go on a mission trip every single weekend right there from in front of your computer or your console or wherever you find yourself playing games, or to a local game shop or whatever. And so the process of identifying and then activating, right, the people in your congregation to do the work of the Lord is truly, for me, this is how we fulfill the Great Commission. If Jesus tells us that we're supposed to go into all the world, the whole world, preaching and baptizing, we have to address these physical and digital places that are rising out of the sea, like Fortnite and World of Warcraft and Call of Duty and this game and this game and this game and this movie and Marvel and DC. We have to address these things. We can't just sit back and say it's stupid, you shouldn't, because they are going to anyway. And I don't necessarily think, even in the realm of things, that it's a sin that they do. And so engaging in those spaces, understanding why it is something that brings them joy, peace, life, and acceptance, in a world where maybe they don't get any of that from anything. They may have a rough home life. They may be doing poorly in school. They may have just got laid off from their job. And now here we come telling them that they're wasting their time playing a video game when that's the only moment in their day that is peace. And so identifying these people, because they come to church for 1,000 different reasons, right? We happen to deal with a lot of people that are not even in the church. Mark likes to say, people that would rather, gamble with the gates of hell than darken the doors of your church. I like to say that they have a better reason for being out of church than we have for being in it, because maybe they've been hurt, or, their family's been hurt, or even worse, somebody down the line that they've heard a story of was hurt by the church. And now you've got generations, you've got second, third, fourth hand hurt that you're having to deal with. Like, finding people that can go into those spaces and love people well, not just to get people into church, but so we can draw people into a closer and more authentic relationship with Jesus Christ. That's the stuff that changes lives. That's the stuff that changes the hearts of rulers. That's the kind of things that we're trying to do. Gaming just happens to be the medium that we use in order to do that. And I'll tell you what, it is a very effective medium when you get the right people in it.
And I think too, like, people just get this flashed image in their head when they think of who are the nerds in my church. And they're like, man, I just don't have anybody with like an obscure Japanese shirt who's overweight with a neck beard in the back seat. Like, that guy doesn't exist for me. And I'm like, well, okay, but Dave in my church is a cybersecurity professional, and Levi in my church is a water treatment plant operator, and Austin in my church is an electrician, and JT in my church is a factory worker. I don't have those people either. Like, you'll be like, hey, does anybody here play Dungeons and Dragons? And like the one of your highest giving engineers in your church could raise his hand, right? And you'd be like, I had no idea. And like, well, yeah, that's why I never come to meetings on Thursday nights at church. It's D&D. Yeah. Like, it's more sacred than anything that you have going on here to me other than Sunday morning, right? Because they just guard it like their life. And you would be surprised at how many people that you just don't know, because A, you don't know how to speak the language, and B, you've never really tried to. You just weren't interested, because it was just easier to be like, well, we have to plan our church around the football game. And you didn't realize that there was more people in your church gaming at night than there was watching the football game.
Yeah, that's good, Mark. Okay, so I recently came to learn about the Nerd Culture Summit that you guys are putting on, and that I'm thrilled about. And so I want to make sure that we touch on that, and you guys give an explanation of what is the Nerd Culture Summit. Explain why you're doing it and what it is.
Sure. So the Nerd Culture Ministry Summit is designed to target ministry leaders. They could be full-time, they can be bivocational, they could be part-time, they could be no time, just volunteer, right? But people that have what we call accountable influence over other people in the church. And this is an awareness campaign for us. It's not necessarily something that's geared towards people who are nerds. We want people who aren't to learn why they should care, at the very least, care about these people in their churches, which we believe that they already do, right? But that's kind of some of the process that we've been talking about here is, how do we identify those people? How do we activate them? How do we engage with them if we can't do the first two? Like, how do we get our foot in the door? And so what we're trying to do is bring people in to Marble Falls, Texas, and we just want to give them November 7th, or November 8th, 9th, and 10th. I want to give them those 3 days to sit under people who have been doing this for a decade or more and learn why it's important, and give them some practical applications, not just high-level theology, but some practical applications of how they could, if they wanted to and felt like this was a good thing for them to do, implement some of these things in their churches. And so we're going to be talking about starting game nights. We're going to be talking about affinity groups. We're going to be talking about, different things that pastors might be able to say from the pulpit to help identify some of the nerds that are in their congregations. And we've got a lot of really great people that are going to be speaking. Mark actually just had a really great episode of NCMU, our Nerd Culture Ministry Underground podcast that we have with Mike Erie. Hasn't aired yet, but it's coming out soon. So be on the lookout for that. Just that, those are the kind of minds that we're pulling into this space. People that you may not even think are nerds, but we had to Mark had to pull him out of a conversation about a video game so that they could continue on with the podcast.
Yeah, we literally spent the first like 5 minutes talking about Destiny 2 before we got to digital church and nerd ministry. So yeah.
Yeah. And so these are people that think deeply and theologically about the ecclesiology of the church and how we are to fulfill the Great Commission and live a life that is holy and pleasing in the sight of the Lord, but also love to play video games, board games, watch movies, and read comic books. And so being able to pull those two pieces together so that the church can see, hey, if we can do it, you can absolutely do it. And the people to do it are right there in your congregations.
Yeah, I love that. I'm so grateful for you guys. Hey, I'm sure there are going to be a lot of people that both are on now and then may watch this later that want to connect with you guys. What's the best way to be able to connect with you?
Well, you can email me. My email is mark, M-A-R-K, @lux, L-U-X, digitalchurch.com. And I set up a time to jump in, hang out. If you are a digital native and you're already a Discord user, you can visit our website and grab the link there. You can go to discord.gg/luxdigitalchurch. And we'd love to hang out with you there. Just like swing in, agree to the rules, and then I'll be at the top right-hand corner as Pastor Mark. Hit me up with a DM and let's chat.
Yeah, for me, you can also email me if that's your thing, Bubba @lovethynerd.com. That's THY, thy, as in King James thy, lovethynerd.com. And then you can find us on social media @lovethynerd on all of the major platforms. Yeah, and we would love to talk to you. And if you want to know anything more about the summit, you can go to ncmsummit.com.
And my social media manager would be ticked. I did not say that we also have Instagram. I don't even keep Instagram on my phone. I film reels for her and send them to her because I was like, it's so funny. When we talk about digital ministry, I was completely off the grid in all ways, social media and digital before we launched Lux. I was like house church guy, not digital church guy. But we do have one, and we're at Lux Digital Church. The nice thing about planning a digital church is that no one is competing for you for handles on any platform because no one else exists. So we have all this stuff. You can even find us on the X or whatever. We've never posted anything there, but I did claim the thing in case I ever wanted to roll into that dumpster fire.
I love it.
So well, I noticed I heard Bubba say if that's your thing, like, there are still some people that use that, so if that kind of happens to be your thing, but
Bill, I have like 15,000 unread emails right now. And so I dare people, just send me one more email, please. Just one. Maybe that'll be the one that gets through.
I keep my email box clean. Okay, guys.
All right. You're better than me. I get it.
Well, I'm proud to tell you guys that I'm actually headed to the airport after this webinar to catch a plane. I have literally downloaded, and I had this before this call, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 to watch on the flight. So
it's good.
You're going to need some tissues.
It is.
It is. Need them.
It is good. Guys, Mark and Bubba, thank you so much for joining us. I encourage everybody who tunes into this, check them out. Go see what they're doing and what they're up to. And at very least, look at the Nerd Culture Summit and what's happening there, because as they mentioned, some of those numbers, this isn't something that's going away or a trend or a side hobby that we should be ignoring. It actually is a whole tribe of people that we should be reaching with the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so, and embracing and being a part of even. And I love how you guys started the conversation, Mark and Bubba, around defining nerd as being that we're all nerds in some form or fashion. We all get a little nerdy about something, right? And so, or a lot nerdy for some of us. So I love that. I love, maybe we should all have bumper stickers that say embrace your inner nerd. And anyway, idea. Yeah, I just appreciate you guys. I appreciate the work that you do. I know it's, sometimes misunderstood and probably criticized significantly. And I just want to say thanks that you're not giving up and you continue to make an impact and see lives changed and transformed for the gospel. So thank you for what you do. And thanks for joining Bill and I. Bill, thanks for being here.
I enjoyed it. Loved it. Thank you. And thank you guys for what you're doing, for pressing into that space and leading the way.
Yep. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for joining us.